If you're planning to divorce or you think you might be divorcing in 2025 and you're looking for some negotiation strategies, then let's hang out for a little bit. Negotiating for anything can suck, and divorce negotiations definitely fall into the sucky category. I kind of liken it to negotiating with children. And if you have kids, then you know what I mean, and I don't need to say more. And if you don't have kids, you may have nieces and nephews or little cousins or godchildren, and you understand exactly what I mean. What I want you to remember is that a fair divorce settlement is actually possible, but they don't happen by accident. Fair divorce settlements happen because people are prepared and they are reasonable. Those two things are really important. It's also important for you to understand what fair means in divorce, which is not always what fair means in the real world. So hopefully after watching this video, you'll have a better understanding of what fair means in the divorce process. And it's totally fair if you don't know because you've never been through the process before. See what I did there? Let's start off with the fact that time is money. I say this a lot, and here's why I say it. Because the longer your divorce takes, generally speaking, there's exceptions to everything, people, but the longer your divorce generally takes, the more expensive it is, because time can quite literally be money when you're going through divorce. So approaching your divorce case as if you're Sherlock Holmes and you have everything figured out, all of your documents are organized, you know exactly what you want. Wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me slow down here. Let's just focus on you being organized. Even if you can do that, you're ahead of the game. It'll actually save you money. It should save you time, which means it'll help you keep the cost of your divorce lower. That is a part of your negotiating strategy. In one of our videos about how to divorce in a loving way, we talk about the 10 ways that you can achieve that. And 4 of those ways actually include negotiating with your spouse in your divorce. So I encourage you to check out that video if you're interested in having a peaceful, loving, amicable divorce. But this video will focus on a few of those specific tactics. Another element that is key to your negotiations, which may sound weird, is enlisting professional help. And not just your typical divorce attorney or someone like me, a certified divorce financial analyst, or even a divorce coach. You want to make sure that you have someone on board who can help you with the emotional aspect, because, as I mentioned in the beginning, the divorce process and negotiations can be sucky. It can also be exhausting and emotionally overwhelming, and you need someone to support you and help you get through that part of the process so that you can be on your P's and Q's when you're negotiating. A mistake that people make is before they sign on the dotted line, they feel like everything is fine, and they decide to fire their therapist or counselor too soon. And then at the last hour, something comes up, it throws them for a loop, and they don't know what to do or how to handle it. So I encourage you, I'm not telling you what to do, but I encourage you to consider keeping your emotional support help along with your other divorce professionals throughout the entire process. The other thing that's important when you're thinking about how to negotiate is to consider what you really want, like what you really, really want, as the Spice Girls would say. The reason that I want you to do that is because you don't waste time negotiating or fighting over things that you don't care about. And I mean truly care about. So 1, I've talked before about making sure you understand the divorce laws in your state, because that will heavily influence and impact what your divorce settlement looks like. And there's no sense in fighting over things that don't make sense for your particular case based on where you live. It's a waste of money and time. So just imagine going into a restaurant and you walk in and it's your first time there, and you look up on the walls and you look for a QR code and you don't see any menus. And a person says, "Hi, can I take your order?" Well, no, because I don't know what I want, because I don't even know what you have to offer. It's kind of like that. You have to understand what's possibly on the table for you, but then also the things that are really important to you, not just the things that you're emotionally connected to, but also the things that make financial sense for you to negotiate over. This essentially means that you are negotiating from an informed position because it is a key strategy to the divorce process. You want to make sure that your financial disclosure is accurate, as well as having enough information to recognize when your spouse's financial disclosure is not so accurate. In order for negotiations to be fair, both parties must understand what's at stake financially in order for you to reach common ground. So let's talk about reaching common ground. I talked about this a little bit a few moments ago, but it's important for you to be realistic. If you're trying to figure out, well, what is the essential element of a successful divorce negotiation strategy, that's the secret sauce. Being realistic. I know, it's probably not what you wanted to hear. But hear me out. The process of divorce is not meant for everyone to get what they want. There are no real winners. Everyone loses a little bit of something. And so because of that, being realistic actually is more challenging than it sounds, because no one really wants to lose anything. However, if you remember nothing else, I want you to remember this part. While there are many different ways to reach a fair divorce settlement, anything that you consider to be a non-negotiable should be realistic and make sense for your financial situation. The goal behind a fair settlement is to make sure that no one is walking away feeling like they will be destitute or that they got the really short end of the stick. But divorce is actually a zero-sum game. So as I mentioned, there are no real winners. On to the next thing. A part of your divorce negotiation strategy has to be keeping the best interests of your kids in mind. Now, I'm a parent, so I know that as a parent, our job and our mission is to protect our children and make sure that they feel supported and are not harmed in any way. That said, I am not here to act like I know your children better than you do, because I don't, but I do understand the divorce process. So here's where hopefully our minds can come together and agree on something. Because you want your children to be harmed as little as possible as you're going through the divorce process, I want you to keep these three things in mind: custody, support, and long-term impact. And when I'm talking about long-term impact, I'm really thinking about the emotional impact that decisions will have on your children. Let's talk about child support first. So child support laws vary by state, but largely they depend on income, custody arrangements, and again, what's in the best interest of the child. When you're thinking about custody, it's important for you to know and understand that legal custody and physical custody are not the same thing. And while you may be walking into the divorce process thinking that you are absolutely going to get sole custody, it is not always easy to get. So before you make that your non-negotiable, going back to what I said about being realistic, it's important that you understand that. And if you and your partner cannot come to an agreement on things like custody and your parenting plan, then the court will get involved and help decide for you, based on what they think is in the best interest of the child that they don't know as well as you know. I'm just saying. Another important negotiation strategy is to understand how assets get divided. So this also ties to the state that you live in or where you happen to be filing for the divorce. Some people live in community property states, while other people live in equitable distribution states. So community property states generally say that assets are divided 50-50. Marital assets, that is. And marital assets are assets that were acquired during the marriage. Equitable distribution states means that the assets will be divided fairly or equitably, which does not mean equally. So your asset split could be a combination of anything between 50-50, 55-45, 60-40, or any other combination in between that totals 100% of marital property. If you understand this going into the divorce negotiation process, it actually gives you a leg up. And this is where your team, your legal team, or your financial professionals can prove to be really valuable. A part of your negotiation process means that you are deciding if the offer that you are receiving from your spouse feels fair and practical and reasonable based on the things that I just said, and that you give yourself time to really consider what you are being asked to agree to. For example, holding on to an asset with a sentimental attachment that you can't afford is impractical. Or asking your spouse to take on all of your student loan debt that you incurred before you got married, or let's say you have a shopping habit and you love shopping sprees, and asking them to pay off the credit card debt likely isn't reasonable. Now, I can't stop you from asking, of course. However, we're talking about the best way to negotiate your divorce strategy in 2025. And so that's kind of it. Spousal support. So spousal support can be paid by either of the spouses, male or female, doesn't matter, contrary to popular belief. And it has been referred to and still can be referred to by some as spousal maintenance or alimony. It is intended to ensure that both parties maintain a similar, not the same, standard of living. So remember my note about time is money? Well, when it comes to spousal support, again, it is true, because many states have predetermined calculations or formulas that will dictate what a person or how much a person has to pay in spousal support. And that is likely tied to how long you have been married. So every day that you are married likely means more spousal support that will be paid. Permanent spousal support is not a guarantee. It is possible, but it is not a guarantee, and it depends on the circumstances. The earning potential of both spouses and the needs of both spouses matter a lot. And again, when we go back to what feels fair or relative, this is where this comes into play. Spousal support determinations can be a super hot topic. So I want you to be prepared for the negotiations to get a little bit intense, and there may be some back and forth. However, again, I also want you to understand what to expect and what is reasonable, whether you are the person paying or receiving spousal support. Now, the firm approach primarily works with female breadwinners, but if you happen to be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home wife, then this part is for you. If you have been a stay-at-home parent or you have earned significantly less than your spouse during the marriage, then spousal support can be a lifeline for you. And if you have children, then it's also possible that you would receive child support. We call it the power combo. However, it's important for you to remember that child support is intended to support the needs of the child, and spousal support is intended to support the needs of the spouse. Child support is generally non-negotiable because you are supporting the welfare of your kids with it, while spousal support may have a lot of flexibility and negotiations to the arrangements. So a good strategy for you to have is to make sure you are prepared with very clear and sufficient information and documentation to support your claims. The last thing that I want you to do is to understand who actually pays for the divorce, because sometimes this can be surprising. As you probably already know, divorce can be expensive. So court costs, attorney fees, mediation fees add up very quickly. And this is also another point where it's relative. Some people's divorce costs $500, some people's divorce costs $5,000, some people's divorce costs $50,000, and upwards from there. And so some of those numbers may seem outrageous to you, and some may not. It just depends on your financial situation. Either way, you already have an idea of about how much you want to spend on your divorce. And so a part of your negotiation is trying to figure out who is going to pay for what. It is not uncommon for each party to pay for their own divorce attorney and legal costs and other professional expertise. However, there are other fees that are part of the divorce process that may be shared. In some situations, one spouse may cover all of the costs associated with the process, but it is not a guarantee that will be the case. So you don't want to spend a lot of time over this one point if it is not realistic based on the circumstances of your case. So let me sum it up for you really quickly, because I know I went through a lot of information. If you feel like you're being realistic, if you feel like you have an understanding of what you're entitled to based on the state that you live in, if you are operating with the children's best interests in mind, if you have an understanding of what you should expect as far as the asset split, and if you have an understanding of what you should expect when it comes to child support and spousal support, and you can take all of those factors and be realistic in your approach to your divorce negotiations, it is very likely that you will have more success with your divorce negotiation strategy and feel like you got a fair settlement. Because in divorce, a fair settlement does not always mean that everything is split equally, nor does it mean that everyone gets everything that they want. If you can go into the process remembering those things, you'll save yourself a lot of headaches and heartburn. If you need additional support, I encourage you to grab the Divorce Support Pack. The Divorce Support Pack was created by the Firm Approach, intended to help women who are in pre- and post-divorce stages. So whether you need assistance with understanding who you should reach out to or what you can expect in the divorce process, or some of the commonly missed financial considerations or things to do when the divorce is over, then the Divorce Support Pack is intended to help you with that. The link to the Divorce Support Pack is in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, share, or subscribe if you've enjoyed this video. Patience and progress. I am Nikki Tucker with the Firm Approach.